This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. This is John Bailey. This is White Plains Week, the City News Roundup show. And also, hello to all you confident consumers out there. Bring us your money, please. John Bailey here with Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, and my partner since the show started back in 2001, Jim Benerofe. Welcome, guys. And right now, Jim, you have the headlines for us.
And here are the stories for the week of December 9th, 2016. Transit Survey presenting plan for developing the City Transit District to be revealed Monday. Holiday season starts in White Plains. John Glenn, first American in orbit, dies. We'll have Peter Katz's popular weekly commentary, Trump in Transition. County will borrow $15 million from its fund balance to balance its budget and keep taxes where they are, and send airport privatization plan out for bid. City doesn't grant French American School of New York claim that the Ridgeway Country Club parcel is not environmentally sensitive. When they will do so is a mystery. Does the city have the right to deny a special permit as it does a zoning change? The French American School of New York plan for the former Ridgeway Country Club will test that, according to one council member. New apartment building proposed for DeKalb and Maple Avenues opposite the new White Plains Pavilion complex. 2,500 apartment rentals to come on White Plains Market within 2 to 3 years. My Brother's Keeper seminar gathers 150 to form action plan to aid Black and Latino youth in improving academic and college-ready, employment-ready abilities. Westchester Jewish Committee annual Judge Learned Hand Award dinner honors 2 White Plains residents, explores free speech debate. The man who invented the cuisine America is best known for around the world passes away.
Thank you, Jim. And now we go to the White Plains Week, Rolo Newsreel March of Time. And the tree was lit in White Plains over in Turbot Parts on Sunday afternoon, ushering in the holiday season. And another thing coming up is Winterfest, which begins Saturday and goes through the week on Court Street. And that should be really new this year. It has crafts, and they are even going to have sheds and not just tents. So we
can only hope that that attracts a lot of people downtown, because from what we saw this week, the holiday shopping season is off to a fairly slow start. Sluggish start. Yes, right. Yes. Actually, we were over at the Westchester, and the mall has done quite a job of spiffing itself up. Yeah. I mean, it looks like almost new construction on the inside if you sort of squint a little bit and you don't realize how long that mall has been around here. And they have done some revamping of what was the food court all the way upstairs. Although the restaurants up there are not yet open.
Yeah, it's a little bit behind.
You know, they had said that they would have that finished by the holiday season, but it's just not ready yet. But they did open up a play area and a tech lounge, as they call it, upstairs.
Yes, and they have a big wall TV. I mean, really big.
It's a video wall. It's
It's like a
combination
sit-in
with-
theater.
Yeah,
Yes.
a very, very large video. When we happened to drop by there was nothing on that we would stay to watch, but you know, it's a very visual thing, very splashy.
Well,
and
it invites you to sit down and just relax, have the kids
is
watch
modern, but
for you.
I think the unique feature is this area for children.
Yes,
Up there.
for those ladies who lunch but don't want your screaming child right next to you, it's perfect.
A nice play area, and of
Yes,
course
exactly.
Santa has made an appearance over at the Westchester Mall. And
We
there
love children, don't we?
there were a few people lined up to see Santa, but again, it was not terribly crowded. So
Yes, well, yes, Santa is in attendance. That
we need we need to keep our fingers crossed, and we wonder whether if the city went back to do what it used to do, which is to put bags over the meters during
Like they
the
do in
holiday,
Pleasantville.
holiday shopping season to really invite people to come into White Plains and park and shop here, whether that might help things a little bit. But
hint, it might, and there is still time, brother, right, to put in that free parking.
and advertise it heavily.
Yes, right.
Put
And
on maybe a big marketing
in New
campaign.
Rochelle-
Welcome back to White Plains.
In New
you know?
Rochelle, they give you 2 hours free on every meter. So that is really nice of New Rochelle to do. But, that is if you want to shop down there,
But in the meantime, we're coming up to the point where they're going to have to start talking about what we're going to do down at the train station.
Right. That's this shot of the train station right there. And we are going to, on Monday night, next slide, please. They are going to have the strategic plan presentation over at the Rexon Building 360. Starts at 6:30 p.m. Be there or
360
don't
Hamilton
be aware.
Avenue, right?
Yes, right.
And it's at 6:30 p.m. So if you work in Manhattan, you have to leave your office at 4:30, maybe 4 o'clock.
Right.
Well, maybe 3 o'clock if you wanted to have dinner first.
Most inconvenient time, and why is that? It's a very important meeting, and maybe they will televise it. Who
Anyway,
knows?
what it's supposed
I
to
don't
be
think so.
is the consolidation and synthesis of everything that was gathered during this process
Right.
to come up with a final concept of what the city is going to tell developers it wants to see them do at the train station area.
And it is supposed to be based on what you, Mr. and Mrs. and Ms. White Plains, businessman and resident over the city, said you wanted.
And Jim, are you ready to get out there and tell them to shape up?
But
Absolutely.
look at all these priorities, though, and I question, really, how much of these really mean more money for White Plains Tills, i.e. sales tax retail. I mean, I'm really eager to see a couple of projects that will bring us in some big money, as I've suggested in the past. But anyway, we shall see.
We will look forward to see what the vision is. You remember the V word?
The V
Remember we
word.
used to hear a lot of the V word? What is the vision?
That the vision
For the
is the word he
redevelopment.
means, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
Right, exactly. And the vision, well, this is supposed to be our vision. We'll see. God, I could really dig a huge 20,000 seat sports arena. I could really like a hotel and convention center, which would make us compete with Manhattan. Let's see if they come up with that. So anyway, now, a sad note. Peter,
Well, one of America's visionaries, one of America's heroes, passed away at the age of 95 this week, and that was John Glenn, astronaut, U.S. Senator, all-round good guy. And actually, I had a little association with John Glenn in that one of the things that I've done in my checkered career is publish aviation safety material. John Glenn, of course, was a pilot in the military, And actually in civilian life, he continued to fly. He, of course, was an astronaut and flew missions which would make any pilot envious. Well, in my role as publishing NTSB reporter and Aviation Monthly, John Glenn was a very loyal subscriber for more than 20 years. Delivered when he lived in Bethesda, Maryland, at a place fittingly called Eagle Ridge Place. And my only regret is that I actually cashed the checks and didn't have one of them framed.
Well, the first rule of an independent businessman is cash the checks.
Yeah, but Glenn had been sick. He died at Ohio State University's cancer hospital, actually. But we, of course, all remember him as the first American in orbit. Now, astronaut Alan Shepard had been the first American in space. It was a suborbital flight. Before him, the U.S. space program had sent up chimps to test out the rockets and the capsules that eventually would carry the Mercury astronauts. It was called the Mercury program. And the Russians had put a man in orbit. They were the first to launch an artificial satellite around the Earth. When that happened in the late 50s, the country was shocked. I mean, we really were in a technological race with the Russians at the time. Cold War was intense. The space race became very, very, very important. And John Glenn carved a niche in history by being the first American to be put into orbit. Now, television news was still coming of age in the early 1960s, and the nation literally came to a halt when it was time for Glenn's orbital flight. All the networks broadcast live coverage of the launch and the flight, but the technology was primitive compared with what we have today. There were no television pictures from space as the flight progressed. Everyone sat on the edge of their seats when radio communications with Glenn from the capsule were lost during re-entry because charged particles had built up on the outside of the space capsule and blocked the radio signals being sent out. So no one knew whether John Glenn was going to survive the heat of re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. Now, if you went to a movie theater in February of 1962, the flight itself was on February 20th, but any time after February 20th, if you went to the movies, you may very well have seen this Universal International newsreel narrated by famous radio and TV announcer Ed Herlihy. Watch.
5 hours before he is destined to take a giant stride into history, Colonel John H. Glenn, Jr. squeezes into his spacesuit. His smiling face belies the 10 postponements of his flight that have kept him grounded. This morning, the weather over Cape Canaveral and in the pickup areas is better, and there's an air of optimism as the Colonel walks to the gantry elevator. Carrying his now familiar portable air conditioner, Glenn prepares to go to the 11th deck as clocks point to 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the capsule atop the Atlas missile, the Colonel will be strapped to a contoured couch. Once in flight, the Mercury will be tilted so that the astronaut will ride backwards. The seconds tick off as his rendezvous with space approaches. The hatch cover causes a slight delay when a defective bolt is discovered. Then, millions are moved to silent prayer. Everything is go. The takeoff of the Atlas, blasted aloft by 360,000 pounds of thrust, carries the Mercury gracefully skyward. The Friendship 7, climbing rapidly out of the Earth's atmosphere, exerts a pressure of 6 times the force of gravity on the astronaut. He checks with ground control.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous. Roger, turnaround has started. capsule turning around, and I could see the booster during turnaround just a couple of 100 yards behind me. It was beautiful.
Actual pictures of Glenn in the capsule will give scientists the opportunity to study his reactions. 3 times the Colonel sees the sun rise within a period of 4 hours and 56 minutes. 3 times around the globe for a trip of 81,000 miles before he re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, a shield protecting the astronaut from the intense heat. Despite a few shaky moments among ground control personnel, Glenn is down. The end of a saga. The now famous Friendship 7 is safely lashed to the deck of the destroyer, and the crew prepares to help Glenn from the capsule. Colonel John H. Glenn, he left his footprints among the stars. He has a grin as wide as the path he blazed as he rests briefly before being flown to the carrier Randolph by helicopter.
And John H. Glenn now resting peacefully.
And
Where else
really-
but on White Plains Week would you see a piece of history like that, huh?
Well, I mean, very few people actually saw it unless they saw it in the theaters, right?
Well, no, there was live television
Yeah.
coverage
Yeah.
of the event, and I remember just being glued to the television set for hours.
Well, it was really tense. And how did they know that shield would stand up?
They didn't.
They didn't.
Where were you working then?
In Boston, actually, I was in school. So, yeah.
Well, I'm somewhat teared up there for watching that. That was a great piece of film. And it really captured the drama, and those pre-flight looks at him were really something. Well, we have had, that was when America was great. And now we have something called Trump in transition in a dramatic change of mood.
Well, it's been one of those weeks in the transition as President-elect
And he's
Trump
not
gets
even
closer
president
and closer
yet.
to being
Yes,
President
right,
Trump. Now,
right.
he did some additional appointments. We can run down very quickly what we know so far. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, a prominent investor, longtime ally of Trump. He helped bail Trump out when his casinos were going bankrupt. Attorney General, Senator Jeff Sessions, highly controversial. He is from the South, from Georgia.
Where else?
Tom Price, Health and Human Services Secretary. He's the one who said that he wants to kill Obamacare and kill Medicare.
And kill some people in the process.
Betsy DeVos as Education Secretary, bringing in an Education Secretary who wants to kill the public schools. She's a charter school person.
Yes.
Elaine Chao McConnell as Transportation Secretary. She was Secretary of Labor under President George Bush, just happens to be the wife of Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell. My goodness. Steve Mnuchin, former Goldman Sachs banker, political fundraiser for Trump, to be the Treasury Secretary. When he ran a bank, they foreclosed on 35,000 homeowners.
Mr. Warmth.
Then he sold the bank. James Mattis, Defense Secretary, retired U.S. Marine Corps General. He is well respected on both sides of the political aisle. Ben Carson as Housing and Urban Development Secretary, the HUD Secretary. Ben Carson, the fellow who ran in the Republican primary for president, the fellow who said he has no government experience, the fellow who said he's not qualified to hold any government job, so he's going to have a government job. Oh, by the way...
Well, that fits right in with government patterns and selecting officials across the country.
It was also discovered by some of those investigative journalists that President-elect Trump really hates, that Carson lied during the campaign. He never lived in housing projects in Detroit, as he said he did. John F. Kelly as Homeland Security Secretary, retired Marine Corps General. Linda McMahon, Small Business Administration, that's one of the new appointments since we last spoke. She is a person who, with her husband, founded the World Wrestling Entertainment, based in Connecticut. Trump did some TV wrestling shows for WWE. And Guess what? WWE donated more than $1 million to the Trump Foundation. She ran for U.S. Senate twice in Connecticut, lost twice. Scott Pruitt, Environmental Protection Agency. Now, Pruitt is the current Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. He has been a sharp critic of EPA regulations. He currently has a lawsuit going against the EPA. Pruitt is tied in with the oil and gas industry. So who else would you appoint to run the EPA designed to protect our environment?
Who else, right?
Secretary of Labor, Andy Puzder. He's the head of Hardee's, you know, the restaurant fast food chain. Now, is he a good pick for Secretary of Labor? Well, maybe he is if you're Donald Trump, because he wants to get rid of human employees at his restaurants. He says robots don't take vacations. They don't call in sick. They don't complain about discrimination. They always upsell the customer to get them to leave more money behind.
But can they notice a mouse in the hamburger?
I don't know about that. By the way, Secretary of Labor-to-be Puzder is against raising the minimum wage.
Maybe it could be for cutting it. You know?
So
who knows?
How does that jibe with Trump's campaign promise that he's out to help American workers?
And the consumers are really confident out there across America. I share your optimism.
The TV reality show to pick a Secretary of State continues. Last week I mentioned that the CEO of ExxonMobil is being considered. His name is Rex Tillerson. Well, it turns out he really is being considered, being given very serious consideration, as Trump has not exactly come out and said, well, I'd really like to have Mitt Romney as my Secretary of State. Romney was given the spotlight last week after he met again with Trump. It turns out that Tillerson, as CEO of ExxonMobil, has got into a $500 billion oil drilling deal with Russia. And he was given an award by Russian President Vladimir Putin.
That's just what we need. Right.
Amazing.
Right.
The head of the union at the Carrier plant in Indianapolis blasted Trump this week for lying about the deal in which 1,300 jobs will go to Mexico, while only 800 will remain in Indianapolis, even though Trump wanted workers at the plant to believe it was 1,100 jobs he had saved. Union President Chuck Jones said the numbers prove that Trump was, and this is a direct quote, lying his ass off. Trump, in response, tweeted that Jones was doing a terrible job as union president. There you go. That's pretty smart. Let me comment for a minute. That's pretty smart for a president-elect who says he's out for the workers of this country to get into a fight with a union leader. That's great. He said Jones was doing a terrible job as union president. Now, the truth is that Jones has been union president for decades and spent months and months working with Indiana Governor Mike Pence and the Carrier management to try to strike a deal to keep the Indianapolis plant open. Now, they finally agreed to that deal after Trump promised Carrier $7 million of Indiana taxpayer money, and Trump said he would cut their federal taxes by $62 million. As of Wednesday, Hillary Clinton leads Trump by 2,676,179 votes, with more votes still to be counted. Voters in Florida have filed a lawsuit demanding a full recount there. Former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, in an interview, said it's about time American workers realize they were conned by Trump. Conned, his word.
Right.
No one in Trumpville, including Trump, cares at all about American workers, said Robert Reich. This is a fraud. Exact quote. This is a fraud.
Really amazing stuff that these guys are going on. Listen, Peter, we have to get to the balance of stuff that happened in White Plains.
Just very quickly, in Washington this week, Hillary Clinton warned about the dangers of fake news, and also Donald Trump appeared on Alex Jones' radio and TV show. Jones is the crazy far-right guy who is one of the biggest purveyors of fake news. He says, for example, the massacre of children and teachers in Sandy Hook never happened. Amazing.
And well, that leaves me speechless. I guess the
so
television
what else
was
happened in
fake,
White Plains this week, John?
Well, interestingly enough, Jim, at the Common Council, we had a new development was proposed for DeKalb Avenue across from the Westchester Pavilion. That's it. And it's going to go where that blue arrow is. The houses are going to go. And how many apartments are in it, Jim?
I believe they said there were going to be 77 units there.
And this is what it's going to look like coming up next. That is the building on the corner. That is Bill Null on the right presenting it. And this is a closer view from the opposite direction. So again, this is where we're going to bring more residents over to the Maple Avenue area. And we've been doing some counting, and at our count, the units around town coming on board, those are the 4 big developments that we know about, plus with the minor developments, with now 50, 60, 70 units around town, you'll probably have more than 2,500. Do you think White Plains can sustain that, Jim? What do you think?
It remains to be
2 to 3 years?
seen. I think they're depending on the fact that New York City has gotten as expensive as it's gotten, and that it's cheaper to rent in Westchester than in New York City. But we'll have to see as they come online. And the Continuum, which is near the railroad station, that's well under construction.
Up to about the 5th floor now.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be 500 units. And the Pavilion property is not under construction yet, and that's supposed to be 700 units. So we'll have to see.
Right. Another thing we'll have to see about is all about the Brothers Keeper effort that took place Tuesday. There was a meeting at the Highlands Middle School in which 125 people came together to discuss what is needed to be done to bring Black and Latino boys up to speed as far as reading, readiness for college and the workforce. However, I really say that you have to include Latino and Black young women in this group. I think that they need all the support they can get too, and it's time to stop this male-oriented type look. I just think that. And they are going to present an action plan to the mayor in 3 weeks. And what I understand is there are not too many from the school district involved in this talking about it. Now we want to give congratulations to the Westchester Jewish Association Judge Learned Hand Award winners.
And very quickly, the fellow who invented the Big Mac passed away.
That's right. Right here.
Michael James Delegati.
Right, a tremendous thing. It put McDonald's on the map and made it #1, and it's still #1. John Bailey, Peter Katz, Jim Benerofe. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.